Excellent. Thank you, JB. Great job. And thanks to TSIA for always figuring out the next frontier. That alignment with sales is such a big deal for so many folks. So I'm super excited about this next panel because it's got three of the most veteran CS leaders out there, and you'll hear their backgrounds in a second, all about kind of digital transformation and what we've learned from customer success in these larger scale organizations. But I'm going to introduce the moderator. She'll introduce the panel. I want to introduce Rochelle DeVoe, who's a managing director at Accenture and leads the customers and channels practice for Accenture's communication, media, and technology practice. And she's been a huge champion of customer success within Accenture, been a big partner and friend to Gainsight as well. So welcome, Rochelle. Thank you. How you doing? Awesome. Fist bump. Here you go. By the way,
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, good morning. It is very exciting to be back with you all on the Pulse stage talking about digital transformation, which is the defining issue in today's economy, not only for legacy enterprises, but companies of all size and scale. Now, despite what my family might believe, they're at home watching us on livecast right now, I am not the main event. The main event is an amazing set of panelists I get to introduce to you all right now. So let's go ahead and start with John Herstein from Box. John leads customer success at Box, where he was responsible for all post-sales teams, including CSMs, consulting, support, exec programs, and engagement. The mission of customer success at Box is to enable and inspire our customers to do amazing things with Box. Now, prior to Box, John led services teams at both NetSuite and Informatica, and a fun fact, John started his career as a technology consultant at Accenture. That gets a fist bump. Boom. All right, so next up, we have Tony Nautilin. From leading SaaS companies at Marketo and Oracle, to on-prem technology companies like Riverbed and Juniper, to on-prem and renewals experts like ServiceSource, Tony has been a participant in the evolution of customer success over the last 20 years. He looks forward to the ride in the next 20. All right, and last up, we have Christina Kosnovski. Coming out, Christina. She's a technology veteran. Christina has spent nearly 2 decades holding leadership positions in the enterprise software space. She's currently the head of global customer success and services at Slack, where she's responsible for ensuring customers realize the type of business value from Slack that creates lifelong customers. Prior to Slack, Christina had a 15-year tenure at Salesforce, where she had overseen services and success functions. So, as you can see, we have a pretty talented panel up here. So we're going to go ahead and get started. With the tenure that these folks have, you can tell from all of their bios, they've been doing this for a long time. So John, we're going to start with you. Digital transformation, this movement is happening. How has customer success evolved since you got started in the industry?
So my career in customer success is only about 7 years old. I was purely kind of a services consulting person before that. And when I joined Box, the way I would describe customer success, and we didn't even call it that, was basically sales throwing a customer over the wall, the proverbial wall, to the client services team, and basically saying, do whatever you need to do to make this customer successful. And my job description was sort of make customers happy. I mean, that was sort of the extent of it. We didn't have metrics, we didn't have methodology, we didn't have really well-formed processes, and not even a lot of clarity about whether a customer, got a CSM or didn't get a CSM. And if you fast forward to today, obviously our business is a lot more complex. We've grown pretty massively, gone through an IPO. The CS team's gone from 15 people to 250 people. And the way we engage with our customers is much more sophisticated. And a lot of that is enabled through the capabilities of digital transformation. So things like data science, machine learning, predictive risk, all that sort of thing, now makes it a lot more manageable for us to deal with a huge set of customers. And if you can see, actually, if we can just show the slide here for a second, what this actually looks like. This is a little bit complicated on the right, so just ignore all the words. But on the left-hand side, what we've moved to is a model where we've got, like many of you, a more complex tiered engagement model or service model with our customers, from very, very high touch, white glove kind of service. At the top, that's only a couple hundred customers, all the way down to our pure automation, which is only possible through the kinds of digital tools that we have today. That's tens of thousands of customers at the bottom of that pyramid. And it's only through this level of kind of maturity of our digital capabilities that we're able to kind of do a segmentation model like this.
Very good. So with all these changes in the way that we do customer success, how has have organizations evolved to embrace this kind of digital transformation and kind of scaling through digital? Tony, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, one of the things that I think it's important to understand if we're going to do transformation and digital transformation right is, we've got to show up intelligently. We've got to be able to have the right conversation with the right customer at the right time. I think one of the things is taking a step back and looking at where the CSM typically gets engaged. If you think about the needs life cycle, which I think is up there now. A lot of times the sales organization and the selling organization is at the beginning of that life cycle, and there's a lot of intelligence gathered there around, understanding the challenge, understanding the solution, the evaluation of it, the selection of it. And I think one of the biggest opportunities and biggest challenges that typically CSM organizations face is that intelligence gets lost. And so I sort of call it the CSM zone, the customer success manager zone, and typically when a CSM picks it up, if they haven't really been given that intelligence and there's a way that you can really segment it, you don't really have a transformational discussion, nor can you scale it through technology. I think we move to the next slide. I think then when you look at how do I get that right message to the right audience at the right time, and I think especially for CSMs in moving customers up the adoption curve, up the maturity curve, it's absolutely important that you can have that segmentation in the customer base, but you can have the attributes of what the customer considers the transformation they're going to go through in the CRM or in your whatever system of record you choose, so that you can actually then tailor through automation intelligently the touch. And I think as John was showing on his first slide, that bottom level where really you do have to automate it, for it to show up relevant, it's important you have that. I do think as well, the other perspective here is a lot of customers, if you think about that life cycle, they're not buying a product. They're buying a solution or they're buying a transformation. A lot of customers are going through digital transformation, and half of the reason they're buying the technology here is that technology is driving a transformation. And it's important to understand the transformation they're trying to achieve rather than just the product that they're using. And again, I think you've got to get those variables right in the system of record. I think then you can use tools like, marketing automation. In my past companies, similar to how sales engage prospects, and it feels very real coming from a sales guy. There's absolutely no reason why the CSM can't be regarded in that same way, and it's a virtual conversation with intelligence behind it.
Christina, anything to add?
Yeah, I think to build upon what you're saying, first of all, customers, they're more savvy, they have higher expectations than ever, and they're really expecting that there's this seamless interaction between the digital experience and the human experience. I know in the early days of customer success, kind of to build on what John was saying, is we always threw people at it. We had this people-first approach, and then technology is what we use to scale. But now we've got to integrate those two interaction points. And customers want this experience that they're getting the right experience, they're getting the right interaction at the right time. And so we've got to empower and enable our employees even more so than ever. And so, at Slack, we've really tried to integrate these strategies a little bit more, similar to the slide John showed, but it's really around a do it with me and a do it for me approach, and really integrating that high touch with the triggered so that they're seamlessly interacting with all of our customers and it's not just one or the other.
Awesome. So Christina, let's stay on that for a bit. We talk about kind of enabling and empowering employees and just the evolution of customer success in the organization. Talk about how the role of the CSM has specifically evolved as we go through digital transformation.
Well, it's really exciting because I think the role continues to become more and more important and is required to be more strategic. And so, we've got to be able to guide our customers. They're often very confused. They don't know what to do. So it's up to us in CS to set that direction. But it's not just to set the direction. Where in the early days of CS, we would set just product direction, and then we kind of pivoted over to kind of transformation and business outcomes. Now we've got to be able to do both. You've got to be able to marry what that product expertise you're bringing with how to do the business processes and the business transformation together. And so they're looking for you to guide through that maturity curve with your customers. And I think the slide that we have up here as well is kind of our maturity and business value. Again, looking at product features, but how that's driving business value to get your customers to that fully transformed state.
Awesome. So we've talked about the role of the CSM evolving, and John, I'd love to get your perspective on the channel. And so as the role of the CSM changes, the role of the partner is changing through digital transformation. So how are you seeing that at Box and in the industry?
Yeah, this is a really complicated topic, honestly, because I think we're all, we're a software vendor, and for our reach to kind of expand to the way we need it to for our business to continue to grow, we really need a healthy partner ecosystem. So it's critical to our business, and I think for many of you as well. And for customer success, the challenge is, we talk a lot about who owns the relationship with a customer. This gets really complex when you've got a partner in the mix. And the reason you're bringing partners to the table typically is that they have distribution channels or they have existing relationship with customers that you want to leverage. So you want the goodness of that part of it. But you also, as a SaaS vendor, you want to control the experience the customer has to a large extent as well, in the product, obviously, because you're running the product, but also to some extent in the customer success arena. And so finding that balance of what does your own customer success team do relative to what the partner does is very, very tough. And what we found is that the answer varies not just by the type of partners. You've got resellers and distributors and SI partners and so forth, but also potentially individual partners of a particular type. So there may be some SIs who have very deep relationships with customers, and others may be much more transactional. And so you have to be able to flex to the right model to work for the various partners that you have. But I also think it's very important for you as a customer success organization to have a point of view. So don't leave it to every single individual partner relationship to decide, well, what are we going to do in this case? You should say, here's how we work with our customers. Here are the expectations we have with how we serve customers. And Mr. and Mrs. Partner, this is what we expect of you. Because it's not just your problem, it's our problem too if this customer doesn't renew, if they don't have a great experience. So I guess what I'm saying is be flexible, but have a point of view. Start with that and just work with your partners as you evolve the business.
And this topic and this question is coming up at every single one of my clients, and how to kind of crack the code with the channel. So of all of the things that you're seeing, especially maybe in the past 12 to 24 months, kind of where is the differentiation that you're getting the most value out of the partner through this? And feel free, any of you guys.
I mean, I would just answer quickly. I think the differentiation for us, we have a very horizontal product. So for us, the differentiation comes from partners who really understand a customer's business specific to a domain or vertical. That's very valuable to us, right? Or if they have deep relationships and a lot of experience around broad transformation. Because when people are shifting their model to store all their content with Box as an example, there's a lot of change management involved in that. So you want to leverage partners who know how to drive change inside of an organization. We're a really small company, right, relatively speaking. So we need to leverage that expertise to be successful with our customers.
Very good.
Yeah, I'll echo that. Slack has a similar solution, and I think it's hard, especially being tied to a product company, when you come in and you're being asked to be this transformation expert, but also be these product experts. So I think system integrators can really help accentuate that trusted advisor, that large-scale transformation, and many of them have those relationships built with the customers, and they're able to look to them to help guide them and really be an accelerator for us.
Good. Anything to add, Tony?
No, exactly the same.
Perfect. So as we move to this next one here, we've talked about customer success and how it impacts the organization. A lot of these decisions, or digital transformation rather, and how those decisions are being made kind of at the top. A lot of folks in the audience today are CSMs and kind of wondering, what does that mean for me? So I'd love to kind of go down the line here and get your guys' perspectives on, what's that one piece of sage advice of, what you would instruct CSMs in the audience to do to kind of embrace and be ready for digital transformation. So Tony, you want to start?
Yeah, so I think, the first question we started was more, I think, operational. I think this really gets to the root now of how does it, change the day job. I think as we talk about digital transformation, the customers that are going through digital transformation require a different narrative from the customer success manager, from the organization. So my sort of few golden words would be sort of really understand, and it goes back to the life cycle, like understand the business problem that you're solving and the business solution that you're bringing to the table, not just the product. And one of the areas, if you just want to go on to the next slide, I think the first thing is to understand, do you have a problem? Past companies back, we used to do loss code analysis. And, what I found very interesting when we first started doing this was, the chart on the left here would look at churn by product adoption. And what I found very surprising was if you really looked at how the product was being used by some customers, it looked as if it was being used very well. It had good usage. And so what then became apparent when you sort of took a step back and didn't look at usage, but you looked at different reason codes, we started to find out that people were churning not because the platform, but because maybe they didn't have the right strategy behind why they bought the platform, or they hadn't executed the strategy, they hadn't executed the transformation, or there was an exec sponsor change. And usually when exec sponsors change out, they either quit or they get quit. And so, and when they get quit, it's because they didn't achieve the strategy or the transformation. So what I started to really appreciate is, and I would say to all of the CSMs here is, and CSM leaders, is understand why you're losing customers. Because it's too easy to say, well, it's the price or it's the product. But understand, are you really losing them around true product gaps? Or are you losing them because they're not transforming? So with that in mind, then, I think if you move on to the next slide, it's then, I think, the role of the CSM to understand, how do they then show up? And there's this great adage, people do not buy half-inch drill bits, they buy solutions to create half-inch holes. And I think if you think about the sales cycle, executives are sold a vision, right? Sales guys, typically for a customer going through a digital transformation, are sold a vision. And as we were saying, a lot of times there's a lot of people around the table. There's system integrators and other vendors to really achieve that vision. And you move a few layers down into the organization, and the user sort of inherits a product and inherits the day-to-day reality of how to try to achieve that vision. And so I think the CSM's role and where they need to continue to adapt is that ability to translate a vision into reality. And what I've shown on the slide on the funnel on the right here is, I think typically CSMs are enabled very well in the product. You go to any company, you go through product training, and they're ramped up very quickly. But if you ask CSMs, how well do you understand the domain to which the product fits, the business challenges, the business scenarios, a lot of times that domain training is, I would say, lacking. And then also understanding the organization that you're fitting into. And I would say organization, the customer's people, the customer's processes, the customer's technical environment, political environment, all of those things, and all of you that have gone through change management and transformation will understand that the organizational mastery of change management is just as important as understanding the domain and the product. And it's only when you bring all of those three things together do you typically achieve that sort of digital transformation and able to have that narrative. So I think that's the biggest goal for CSMs, is to up-level the narrative and really understand what it means to show up not just around the product, but around the domain and around change management.
Very good. Christina?
So I'd say don't forget to move quickly. We need to act with urgency, and you need to have these rapid cycles of innovation and use data and AI to gain the confidence and show this continuous wins and continuous improvement with your customers. So don't underestimate that urgency, getting your customers to move quickly and creating those rapid cycles.
All right. And last but not least, John?
So a couple things. One is this notion of automating the mundane. If you think about the role of the CSM, a good analogy that I heard recently is CSMs historically, and we haven't been around that long, but they've really been like these artisanal craft people, right? Where it's very, very one-off, bespoke kinds of conversations we're having with customers and so forth. And certainly at the scale of our business, that just doesn't work. And the fear I think that people have is, well, if you automate all these different aspects of my job, what will my job be? What's my identity? And there's this fear of being, automated out of a job. And this happens in lots of industries. And I think you got to embrace it and think about it the opposite way, which is if you can take the really mundane, repeatable aspects of my job away and just make that really, really simple. So we, for example, have automated the creation of a QBR deck. That gets us 90% of the way there in terms of the content. Then what you focus on for the other 10% is your unique value to the customer. And I think to Tony's point, really understanding how your product or service fits into the problems that they have as a business, that's the value add of a CSM, is driving those kind of conversations, not generating decks that are going to look largely the same for most of our customers. So that's the first piece, is really embrace that automation. And that's, again, kind of the beauty of the digital transformation we're seeing in our business, is the tools we have now enable us to do that. So that's really key. And then the second thing I think also ties to something that Tony said, which is always be curious. One of the first questions I ask a CSM when we're talking about a customer situation, whether it's an upsell or a risk or anything that's going on, is what do they do? Like, what is this company about? What do they do, and how are they using Box? What problem are we solving for them? If you're not curious about that as a CSM, frankly, you're probably in the wrong job, right? You should be really curious about what your customers do, what their business is about, and how your product or service fits into that. So my last piece of advice is just always be curious about your customers.
Awesome. So become a master of the solution, move quickly, and always be curious. Very sage advice, and a big thank you to our panel this morning on digital transformation. Thank you all.